his trans thing last week, and it was very overwhelmingly positive, I have to say. I was fearing the worst, as you do. You know, people are gonna be mad at you or whatever. Or, you know, the fear that I had as I come out and, like, every T-girl's like, you're fake, you're not one of us, we can tell. You know, that didn't happen. You know, that wasn't, that fear wasn't founded. Everyone was so sweet and lovely. Just everyone. And, you know, you get the different types of responses. Some you want, some that are expected. Like, people now very much tripping over their dicks to be polite and shit, which is very sweet. It's very nice to see people do that. And because, you know, it shows that they care. They're trying, you know, they want to, they're trying to get the pronouns right and everything. And it's like, I don't have fixed answers for you. Honestly, like, I'm just trying to ignore a lot of the comics, because along with the wave of way more, like 99.9% positive shit, of course, because it gained some traction on Twitter. You had the right-wing guys, you know, the TERFs with accounts named after Jermaine Greer saying, you know, you're a man, you'll always be a man. I love these ladies. Failed man, Troon. Can I discuss Troon? Troon is so funny to me. It's just impossible. I think I talked about it on the Cold Cuts podcast that I was on, but it's just impossible for me. Why this phonetically adorable word, this phonetically cute word, Troon, we're trooning out. You know, I cannot take it serious. It does not have, you know, I'm trying to think of like a really like fucked up word, you know. Faggot is much more fucked up when it's coming from someone with anger, because it's got like the two G's in the middle there. That's how you know a word is bad. If it's got muggle, you know, that's how it's got the two G's right in the middle there. But yeah, when someone's saying faggot in anger to you, that's scary. You know, when someone says Troon in anger to me, I guess it's scary if they were like hunting me on the street. But even if they were going Troon, you know, chasing me with a knife, I'd be like, it's got it. You know, it's a little comical, that phoneticism, that word. So yeah, you had people doing Troon Jacks at me, which is fine. Also, the thing in my head, the phrase that I've been knocking around in my head is epistle to Troon Jack. I don't know why. I feel for Troon Jack. What is her story? What is Troon Jack's life like? How is she doing? Well, you know, she's always yelling on the internet. Peace be with you, Troon Jack. What if they killed Troon? She's always killing herself in the comics. Poor Troon Jack. I will do the eulogy at Troon Jack's feet. These fucking people are so fucking weird. But, you know, that's how they get their jollies, is insulting trans people on the internet. Which is fine. Actually, you know, being a cartoonist, being visibly online, I don't know why I'm talking Southern, but I do this occasionally. Visibly online, you know, I don't know why that has, it's sort of good preparation for all the mean and nasty shit people are going to say about you, because people have already said extremely mean and nasty shit about me, you know, which at first, in my earlier experience, I would get all how dare you? I am bringing art and joy into this world with my cartoon. You know, I am the most important. But no, obviously that's the nature of seeking attention online, is you go out there. A lot of people will like your stuff, and of course there will be people who dislike your stuff. Sometimes people who even dislike your stuff for good reasons. Maybe you made a shitty comic and people talk about that. And that, frankly, that's more devastating than some, you know, monstrous, soulless, right-wing goon being like, you're a man, Troon. Troon. I can't take it seriously. Oh my God. Yeah, I think, I still have more stuff to say about it. I've been holding on to these feelings for a while, especially last episode was a lot about joy, a lot about the exploration, the joy that I felt coming out. But, you know, along with joy, there are consequences. And I guess, that's what that opening spiel was about. Their consequences, You say you're trans. And like magic, and because people online are attuned and polite, they're calling me she already, which is very nice. I don't expect everyone to do that right away or to, some people have differing degrees of how affected they are by it. I'm not seriously presenting. I'm not on HRT. I'm not on I'm showing my makeup off on a private alt account as many trans girls do. It's not great yet, but they're cheering me on. All the nice people are being like, you go girl, you look good. It's like, thank you. Encourage me to do more. The eyes are fucked. I'll get it. Either way. But yeah, so yeah, and part of the reason you do want to be a woman, in my case, is that however subtly, women are treated differently. Trans women are treated, but you sort of, part of why you want that aspect of being socialized, as they say, as a woman, is because people just, you say the word and it's like people are more polite to you. Some people, the good people, the nice people, they're more that's always what I wanted. That's part of it. And boy howdy, does it work almost instantly if you say the word. And then certain people will be far more impolite to you. That's obviously the trade-off. You'll get the reaction you want out of the people you want it from, but you also get the reaction you don't want out of the people you don't want it from. And that is the joy and the consequences, right? So, and that's what you're always dealing with in life when you're pursuing something that is true to you, but might come with some element of risk or social alienation or difficulty. You want the joy, but you have to cope with the consequences as well. And I think the biggest consequence for a lot of queer people, not just trans, not just queer people, but, I don't think this is even for lots of cis and hetero people as well, is relationships with their parents and how you sort of come to define yourself, especially if you initially have a good relation. Not especially, I can't say especially, I say especially, but my relationship, and I'm going to talk about my dad today. I'm going to talk about my freaking dad. I sort of was going over this in my head. Should I make this a Patreon episode? Should I put it behind a paywall? Should I, because I'm kind of get raw. I'm not going to try and denigrate him or anything. I'm not going to try and really go hard on him. I'm going to try and describe factually, to the best of my knowledge, what I think is happening without, being too uncharitable towards him. Because what he does is, it's not good, and it's sort of existentially threatening to me, but I still must acknowledge his humanity and the fact that I think a lot of the behavior that he demonstrates is informed by stuff that is out of his control. And in that sense, I feel a lot of compassion for him. I was deeply existentially angry at him for a while, but I am not talking to him, but it's just I can't reduce him down to this monster, because as much as I want to, and as much as I have done emotionally hashing out my feelings towards him, because he's a guy, and to turn him into a monster is that's just your brain playing tricks on you. He's just a person. He's just a man. You're a man, Troon. And yeah, so and the reason why I was sort of reticent about putting behind a paywall is because it's weird doing this, because you're at the crux of this sort of a couple of desires. And I'm talking about podcasting and also being publicly raw about your personal relationships or revealing about it, because it's there's always that parasocial or seemingly cynical element looming in the background if you're doing this for entertainment purposes, which is what this essentially is. I'm ranting about, I'm doing this in lieu of therapy. And this was just what therapy was for me anyway. I found a therapist that would just let me rant at him for 90 minutes. And that's what I needed, because I have this type of, this is how I hash my shit out. It's funny. It's like you can't talk to your friend about 90 minutes. You can't do a 90-minute monologue to your friend about your fucking trans problems. But if you frame it as entertainment and put it in a podcast, then people will be like, oh, yeah, I'll listen to that while doing my laundry. You can have your very own trans person in your living room being like, my relationship with my dad's all fucked now. For entertainment. But I don't know. So there's a sort of weird aspect to that as well. But I don't know. I sort of like doing it. And I do see a utility in it, because after the last episode, I was getting all sorts of people who were coming out to me saying, listening, hey, I went through a lot of this, and what you said resonated with me and helped me a lot. And not to be like I'm changing the world or anything, but if, the ultimate point of art or, entertainment or whatever is communication and connection, I feel I achieved that to some degree with just the response of positive, I related to this responses I got from the previous coming out episode. So I figure, why not go more? Maybe if you're feeling a little alone or a little isolated because you have an experience of parental estrangement, be it because you're trans or be it because your parents are just jerks or whatever. I mean, they're jerks to reject their trans child, but I don't know. Maybe, parental estrangement is not unique to trans people, but being parentally estranged because you're trans, which is what's happening in this case, is unique to trans people. So I might as well discuss it from that perspective. This is a very common thing. It's actually, the parental estrangement is basically the number one problem with queer people, because as any queer person will tell you, marriage, sure, these are nice liberal rights, that allow us to transfer property without having to pay tax. That's great. Wonderful. But as anyone knows, the huge problem, the much more significant problem with queer people is queer youth homelessness in general, because it's still to this day, you come out as gay, that you're out of the fucking house, That's it. That happens all the time still, less than it did, but it's still a huge percentage. As you're trans, you're out of the fucking house, right? And I think, just the threat of that alone, the threat that the supposedly unconditional love that your parents have for you will be withheld if you come out, prevents a lot of people from coming out, because, you love your parents. Whatever else they do, if they're even halfway conscientious, they have provided for you in some way, which will inure you to them. You'll get used to them, and you'll believe that they are gods and they have the ability to control your welfare. And for much of your life, for much of your early life, they do. So yeah, of course you view them that way, as these sort of all-powerful entities. Not only that, they comprise so much of who you are. So much of the good aspects of who you are come from the good aspects of your parents. And you want to say, oh, all your parents do is fuck you up. No, I mean, maybe some of you out there, some of you have really, but my parents, as much as they fucked me up and they gave me depression and anxiety. No, they also gave me skills and confidence. They taught me unique stuff. They because they had relatively distinct idiosyncratic personalities, I cobbled together something from both of their influences that I sort of like. I think there were many good aspects, and that's tough to reflect when you're having difficulty with one or both, because it's like there are parts of me that I like that are now sort of married to these people that I don't like, or that I feel some sort of deficiency in, or who represent some sort of antagonism to me now. How do I reconcile that? How do I reconcile? Much like Rey being a Palpatine in Rise of the Skywalker. My grandfather is evil? How can I be good if my legacy... No, but it is... So in Rise of the Skywalker is about trans. But yeah, so yeah, it's it also like there's that classic rejected by the creator. Why hath the creator rejected me? Classic crass narrative. This all looming father allows you to die, allows you to be butchered, because he wants to know you're suffering, which is, but you are him as well. So it's, that's the narrative, or, for a less allegorical one, Prometheus. Actually, Prometheus is a pretty allegorical movie, but in Prometheus, the creator, remember the movie Prometheus with the big white guys and they made the aliens, and the creator rejected humans. Why? The creator has rejected me. Creator, why? Father, why have you... Yeah, Nepter in Adventure Time. But, but it not so much a rejection. I mean, that's the other issue with it, is that I'm very important to my dad, because up till I stopped talking to him about 2 months ago. I don't know. But I was one of the few people that he was able to, talk to freely. He didn't have a ton of friends, he can talk to with a lot of honesty. And, from him, I inherit this monologuing ability, or this monologuing, not even ability, just tendency to be able to constantly spew my thoughts out at a rapid and semi-articulate pace, at least. And it's not even semi-articulate. It's the words kind of make sense and it flows along. And yeah, and the issue of talking about anything with him is he goes into and he can't stop himself. Which, you could speculate about neurodivergence or whatever, and I can too. I don't want to do that because everybody does that, but I guess I just did, so I doomed myself. But it's like, sometimes you're looking at your parent, and you're looking at one parent is like, man, your undiagnosed autism would explain a lot of this. It would explain the echolalia. It would explain the hyperfixations. It would explain a lot of, but who knows? I can't. He never got tested, and everybody says they're autistic nowadays. But sometimes, it's like, I don't know, man. And so yeah, the problem I love my mom when I came out as trans had a fine reaction, which was like, I don't get it, but sure, I love you. You're great. I'm reading the books. I'm getting the book by the lady who was on the WB. She was on the WB Supergirl show. She was the first trans. I'm gonna read her book. It has 3 quotes from Ovid's Metamorphoses at the beginning, because it's about the transformation. I'm learning. She was educated. she's nice. My mom. So it's not. I got one good parent who had a very fine, appropriate reaction, and I'm very blessed for that, because some people don't get any. But yeah, my dad has been on a steady diet of right-wing, Facebook pill, Daily Wire. I don't know if it's Daily Wire, but some sort of whatever media he's consuming is very right-wing, and has only become more right-wing into the essentially QAnon, Q-pilled conspiratorial territory. And it's been like this for a while. I don't remember how exactly it started. But if I had to pin it, and the reason why it's difficult for me to get angry at him, and why I'm mad that I can't get mad, I always use that phrase, you're mad that you can't get mad at somebody, is because, and obviously none of this is my fault, I didn't do anything, but I feel if I had been more attentive or pitched in to family labor a little more, you always fear that some part of this is your fault, your inattention is what led to this. But my dad's right-wing turn happened to coincide with a period of long isolation due to elder care with my grandmother, who was going through like horrible dementia, and like for the last 5 years of her life, just round-the-clock care, just not great, you know. And he was experiencing what I can only imagine is the most unendurable stress, you know. I had to change grandma's diaper once, and that made me feel fucked up. So I can imagine, you know, having to do it every, because, you know, she's demented too, so she's saying stuff like, "You're killing me, you're killing." It's like, it's not a good time, you know. It's really bad. So I can only imagine what he was going through day to day, and how it just sort of brought out all of his worst tendencies, because he was doing something extremely stressful. And he was, as a result of having to do this task, he became, he didn't have to. He's sort of like, I mean, it's sort of, he quit his job at a time when she was just having to require more care, so it sort of fell on him naturally, but he absorbed the role anyway, and I think he did receive some utility. I don't know if he regretted it. It just happened that he got the duty of the elder care for my grandma with dementia, and so you know, that was basically his full-time job for years and years, and it's not a good job. You know, it's something. He is not a nurse. He's not patient. You know, he's the thing. What it was. My dad is a muralist. He's an artist. He's a very good painter. He's actually an astonishingly great painter. But he, for many reasons, he had difficulty making it work throughout his life. He struggled with alcoholism. He struggled with impulsive behavior. And I don't want to speak too ill of it, because I inherit his addiction. I inherit a lot of impulsive behavior, which I've had to take active steps to tamp down throughout my life. But yeah, he had difficulty building the business and having the hustle you need for that, because his impulsiveness led him to difficulty in maintaining business relationships. It's a lot easier to do that online. So my impulsiveness, actually, online, it's the opposite, where impulsiveness can actually help you improve your business relationships, because you're just flitting about with a bunch of random avatars and PFPs online. But yeah, so he was, you know, very talented guy, but just couldn't, you know, obviously making it as an artist is extremely difficult any way you slice it. But yeah, he just did not have the temperament for it. And I think this always left him angry or like passed over in some way. And with that sense that he had been passed over, and he had even been, before his, like, he started consuming right-wing media heavily, he always believed, or he had intimated to me, because a lot of his paintings and murals are sort of traditionalist or historical paintings. He's very influenced by someone like Winslow Homer. He would probably cite as like a big inspiration, someone like that. Obviously, he's a big like Cézanne fan, big impressionist fan, and his paintings are sort of after that to capture the perceived quality of light, but in this sort of almost rigid modernist historical conservative way, which is interesting. I mean, he always had this sort of conservative bent to him, but it wasn't until he started consuming Facebook pilled, you know, boomer brain destroying right-wing media that he got really nutty with it. But he always had that general, I'm a dad and I like World War II, and, you know, talking about Canadian history, and the thing about, nothing that out of necessarily the ordinary, nothing particularly alarming about his political beliefs. He was mostly apolitical from what I remember. But I think this sense of being passed over always carried with him. Yeah, I remember him talking to me once about like, I could have made it in the 90s, but I was doing historical representational painting, and all of the stuff that was getting vogue in the art world in the 90s was like queer, like lesbian stuff. It was all lesbian. You know, he said the word lesbian specifically, which was weird to me. It was like, I guess, yeah, that sense of that, because what you're doing is sort of conservative by nature, or sort of, more about form, classical practice of form than it is about, exploration of feeling, you feel like the world has left you behind in some way. And I think this is the feeling that persists with him, that sort of animates his desire to go into right-wing media, because the right-wing media, what it tells him and men like him is, yes, you are absolutely correct. The world has left you behind. Look at all these lesbians. Look at all these queers. These are representative of this horrible post-apocalyptic future where, there is no place for you will be hunted like Mad Max. That's what they fear. Not only are everyone is transforming into mutant queers, but these mutant queers will want to hunt you. So yeah, I think he always felt that sense of persecution even before he got nutty with it. So yeah, he always carried these. And also he's Catholic. He's very Catholic as well. That's a big part of his conservatism. What animates his conservatism is this. And I do not doubt his Catholicism. He's a guy. If you've been a long-time listener of the show, you've heard me talk about him before, even before I post about him. I was saying that I was trying to get him more into Catholicism than right-wing media, because at this point the Pope is like skews more left than the Q-pilled stuff, which, whatever. He had difficulty with it. Like I was even talking to him about it, and it's like, the Pope says that you share good tidings with commies, right? He says that socialists and Catholics have the same cause, right? This new commie Pope, Pope Frank, right? And he says, well, I'll have to talk to the deacon about, I don't know who, the priest. I'll have to consult my priest. He might be, I don't know what the priest says about socialism, because I think he's sort of rejecting this Pope. I think he's become one of those guys. He's become extremely like trad. Like I once did a comic where it was like a guy, he says, can't enjoy fucking football anymore, it's too goddamn woke. Can't enjoy TV and movies anymore, it's too goddamn woke. And then another guy asks, so what do you do in your leisure activity? And then the other guy, he just stews in anger. And right-wing people, they had the comic, I don't know if it was well executed enough, because the obvious comeback to it is like, football and TV, you are consumer-brained. Go out and play, you fuck. I find stuff in God or whatever. But that was based on my dad. My dad, who liked sports before, he liked movies and TV and, talking about movies and TV and music. He liked the Beatles and shit. But since consuming all this right-wing media, he thinks it's all like idolatry. And it's just sad it's like he's tricked himself into anhedonia. It's like really sad to see. And I don't even blame him, because it's this thing that is, I feel we're all getting fucking warped by online. Have you seen those like memes of like those hardcore memes of like T-boys and T-girls on Tumblr? It's like they have images of like puppy girl porn in the background. It's like, become the girl you're inside of, idiot. It's intense, like it's like gooning, but for like trans inspiration or something like that. But he's doing the same thing. It's like, become the trad Chad you always were. Everyone's looking at everyone's goon maxing, their idealized version of themselves in their heads. That was a stupid way to put it, but yeah, he's developed this version of it. Frankly, I think the idealized version of me in my head, which is a kind of witchy lady, kind of bricky witchy lady. I think that's a lot. It's a more it's a nicer goal than I want to be. Trad. I want to be crusading. I want to do crusades too. That's a weirder goal to have, in my opinion, but it's his goal. I think he would very much like to do crusades too. But yeah, he's super Catholic. Part of that is relationship with his dad. He had a troubled relationship with his father, who is actually funny because his dad was a left-wing Catholic, And frequently, I think my dad may have held like right-wing beliefs, like as a contrarian rebellion against his dad, and then sort of just ran with them or felt that they made him feel good. But yeah, my dad's commitment to Catholicism, I think whatever feeling the fucking Holy Spirit is, yeah, he feels it. I don't think he's faking. You see it in his eyes. He needs that shit, because he is intensely afraid of death. And because he has always felt passed over, he wants the promise of eternity because he likes himself, but he feels like he never got a chance to like himself because everybody was always getting him down. So the idea of being in heaven, where you're given a sense of permanence, a sense of an eternal version of yourself that is not antagonized, that is never antagonized, I think is very appealing to him because finally a chance to be me and for people to like me for who I am. And I've asked him about, I've asked him about it, and that's basically what he says. I've asked him about why he likes heaven, the idea of heaven, or the idea of being like a permanent ego, a permanent self. And he has said that. And God, I find that so sad. I find that it's like the Michael Scott thing. It's like that moment, The Office, whatever, is like Michael Schur, I hate you. But there's this one scene in it where Michael Scott, it has like a thing of him as a kid. And he's talking about his goal as a kid is to have a family with 100 kids, because then the kids have to love you as a father. And it's like the kids, then they have to be your friends, And it's, to me, that's his life. It's like he's just too fucking awkward to fit in anywhere. And he just wants, somebody to like him for who he is, which is hard because who he is, he's, I'm sure if he found a way to treat a lot of his mental difficulties, he would have been a less difficult person to be around. But he didn't work on himself, let's say. And I'm sure the 10 years of highly traumatic elder care did not help either. I mean, that's also why I can never truly be angry at him, or I can never say that he's a bad person because he did something fucked up that was necessary that other people in our family weren't willing to do because we were all busy with other shit. And we figured, oh, good, someone's handling this. I don't want to do this because every time we try and change her, she goes, oh, you're killing me. You're killing, it's the worst. It's the worst fucking thing in the world. So, of course he would get stir crazy, and I hope that over time, after my grandma passed, he would get calmer, but I think he's into it now. He found this community online, basically right-wing people. The thing that he always wanted is people who would like him for who he was. And so if who he was suddenly this right-wing guy, if who he was suddenly this person who is this crusader for the moral right against, queer people warping the nature of reality, then he could finally fit in. He could be who he always was. It's funny, you relate, it's very much like the trans thing. We're all trying to be who we are, and we're all trying to find community with people whose experiences seem to vaguely match up with ours. And he found it in a community of other dudes, let's be honest, white dudes, white guys, am I right? But yeah, that's who it is. It's not just white guys, but it's, white guys who feel like they've been passed over. That's who have been left behind by society. And who picks up these guys is Jordan Peterson. That's who got my dad really into all of it, is Jordan freaking Peterson. He's at the root of all of this. And I understand precisely why my dad loves Jordan Peterson, is because he already talked like Jordan Peterson. He already talked in that sort of effeminate, crybaby, monologuing, what you don't, and what he said was, it didn't make any sense, but he would get in a huff about it too, so he would just say anything But because he had this sort of like theater kid ability to be very articulate with his words in the same way that it would always come out like this. And the thing that you don't understand about meaning is that when we perceive God, we understand that God is of the world. And I cannot separate the idea that the devil can, and he would, stuff like that. And that tone of voice that I'm doing, that's how he talks, and it's how Jordan Peterson talks in that very sort of theatrical, over-enunciated, sort of inspired religiosity sort of way. I don't know if, like, some people are more religious if they got, there's some sort of thing in your brain, there's some sort of part of your brain which can get enlarged, and it makes you more religious, or think that you see the patterns behind everything, or see God. And that's something that my dad is very much into, is coincidences. He loves coincidences because he believes they are signs. He believes that, everything happens for a reason, which comports with his sort of religious belief in structure and order, so that the randomness of life can be explained by coincidental things. He always places a lot of meaning on coincidences. And one thing that he also believes is that he is a master expert at reading body language, which is hilarious because I have met no one worse at reading body language, as evidenced by the fact that he does not understand how uncomfortable he makes people. Yeah, I mean, I can talk a lot about he treats women, and internalized misogyny, and why I had such fucked up feelings about women for a while. I really don't want to go in on him that much. I'll rest, but I'll one anecdote, about his treatment of women. When I was a kid, he would go around, he would just randomly pay compliments to women on their looks, which is, I don't know, maybe you can get away with that. I don't think you can when you're with your kid and you got like a wedding band. That's like sort of a weird thing to do. But I think he thought that he was being polite, and all women love being complimented in this sort of like chivalrous way, that he didn't really understand the libidinal thing. He sort of has this, he wants to believe that he presents as innocent and that there is no libidinal quality to his interactions. But, there is. It's obvious there is, because, I think a person who's just minding their own business, who doesn't want attention from these women, doesn't go around, complimenting them. And the thing is, these women were always uncomfortable, as you would be if you're like a young woman, or you're like a woman in your 20s, and this like 30-year-old guy with his fucking kid is like saying, "Oh, you look gorgeous, ma'am," in like that sort of faux chivalrous way. Yeah, they would always look uncomfortable, and he would just never pick up on it. Just never, and he would continue to do this. So, this always it's why to this day I find it difficult to pay compliments to women, even though women who I have an established relationship and on their appearance or something, because I fear like, it's going to cause some sort of discomfort. But, in terms of like things that you don't realize, how deeply ingrained misogyny is in you until later. It's like you think about stuff like that and find that was presented to me as like appropriate behavior. It's a wonder my parents got divorced. But yeah, he had like very like old-timey, very old-fashioned, very trad beliefs about women, which I think also animate his difficulty, as he saw a lot of women pass him by professionally or occupy positions of power over him. Even in the end, he's with his grandmother, my grandmother, his mother, who, even though she's helpless, still occupies this position of power over him, this great, immense task that he must do out of sheer obligation and love, but this sort of almost burdensome, that's the wrong word for it, but it's true, it's burdensome and oppressive love, which is what I feel from him a lot. I mean, that's another thing that he would always talk about, is his sense of loyalty, as is one of his great characteristics. But the problem with loyalty and, somebody who is attached to you is like, what if they're a burden? What if you don't want them to be attached to you? What if, what if them being shackled to you is bad, actually, for you? Loyalty is good if the person who is loyal to you like. But that's what he was. He is very loyal, because if he finds somebody that's stuck with him, like a child or a partner, or even, his family, he likes them because he can berate them, and they're a captive audience. They still have to interact with him no matter what, which is something that he would frequently do. And even if you would correct him on his behavior, because he just cannot take criticism, there's just no help in the guy. So yeah, he really, and it's like that Michael Scott, I want 100 children because then they have to love me. I want a big family. And I think that's sort of what animates his trad things, because it's like, when you're the patriarch of a big trad family, you can be a big angry asshole, and everyone just has to love you anyway. You can act however you want. You don't have to think about making other people feel comfortable. All you have to do is, succeed in your provider position, which is interesting, because he didn't even, he was not the breadwinner. He occupied a caretaker role much more often, because he was a muralist. He was a freelance muralist, so he would make less money than my mom, who had a consistent job. But as a result, a lot of childcare duties would fall on him. And he's very good at childcare, it turns out. It turns out that instinct that promotes that, like, I like a captive audience because they have to pay attention to me, makes him very good with babies, because he's like, babies love you if you just, take care of them and play little games with them. He raised my cousin Tara a lot. Maybe. Oh, that's her name. She's great. I love my cousin. She's wonderful. Don't try and find it. But he was great with her, So, and that's the other reason why I have, difficulty demonizing or making him into a monster, because my dad has many positive qualities. He's chief of which was his excellence at childcare. He was very good at raising me, and very good at, like, as a young child, and not fostering my creative abilities. And it's funny he's so anti-trans now, because, like, every artistic instinct he fostered in me was pretty fucking faggy, and he's pretty fucking faggy himself, but he wouldn't recognize it as faggy, and he always was fighting that fucking faggy part of himself, because he's a muralist. He likes music, he's a fancy boy. But yeah, I want to be tough. Sometimes I wonder about it. But yeah, so I have so many fond memories, and because my dad was so good at early childcare, I think, I gained a lot of mental health from that. I don't have any sort of weird attachment disorder. And it sort of makes his turn into someone who is somewhat antagonistic towards me just a lot, very painful, because I remember I have so many good memories of this guy, and they weren't colored by, like, maybe there was some, like, abusive stuff in the back, and my parents had, like, a really difficult marriage. That was, like, really bad, but, like, the large portion of my childhood memories are mostly positive. When I was first stopped talking to him and I was so mad at him, I was thinking, it was all bad this whole time, and remembering all the worst stuff he ever did, because if you acknowledge the good stuff, it's just so painful. It's just, there's a fucking there's a scene in Pose, in the FX Ryan Murphy scene in Pose, where Blanca, the main character, she's the mother for her drag house, and she's flashing back between her demonstrating care for her little drag daughters, and then flashing back to her mother demonstrating early child, when my mom still loved me, when she was a little kid. And how you try and mimic that, sort of like, you sort of try and, when you get older, at least in my 30s thing, you try and, like, you want to give to people in that way, because you don't want them to feel rejected in that same way. Because even though you shouldn't get mentally fucked up from it, even though you are your own person, you still feel like, why don't they love me anymore? Why don't they support me with my tranny issue? shouldn't frame it like that. It is very devastating, and I have to turn everything into a joke. But it is. I mean, it's also there is a funny aspect. I mean, it's not funny, but it's like no one died. And to my dad's credit, if you can call it that, he consulted his priest about it or whatever. And his priest said, don't try and dissuade your kid, don't interfere or don't actively interfere, was what the priest said. And, good on the priest. Thank you, priest. That was good advice. Priest said, of course it's a sin and it's awful, but if you actively, your son, I'm sure they called me your son is an adult. Your son can do it he wants. And so, at least the priest issued restraint. Actually, pushing towards I'm sure if he had gone towards the Q-pilled people, they would have told him, get him, deprogram, get him. So maybe the Catholicism, pushing him towards the Catholicism did end up working out for me at the end. Who knows? I don't think so. But, yeah, it was really bad how he found out, so he's really weird about it. He's like, there's that whole and I don't want to, I guess I have to get into this territory because there's always that fucking weird libidinal element to it when they talk about it. Specifically, the words that he would always repeat when he's talking about transition, or you get something in about Leah Thomas or something. He'd be talking about Leah Thomas and he gets off in a rant. These fucking brutes, these gorillas in the fucking locker rooms with their big hairy 9-inch cocks, and he would say that, he would repeat that, which is weird with his echolalia. But I wonder where he got that from, and I realize he got that from God Sod and other right-wing people, where they're always talking about big 9-inch cocks of trans women who are using restrooms or women's spaces or whatever, and it's how can I not read a weird sexual titillation element into this? That's what you're fixating on. So they have big dicks. They have real big dicks. And he would say that. And he would say that shit. I mean, I guess that's what right-wing media a lot is about too. It's very, there is this deeply sexual element to it, because it's always about keeping it's about chastity. It is gooning in a lot of ways, or edging, or chastity fetishism, because it's all about, this thing that other people are doing, doesn't it make you fucking sick inside? Doesn't it just make your insides all riled up? And the excitement comes from learning about it and then tamping it down and then getting angry about it, which I think that's where it's sort of the sort of the what should be sublimated into sensual pleasure instead gets sublimated into rage, which I think is that's the story of a lot of men. And so that libidinal element sort of pervades, and it's how he would discuss trans people very frequently, with reference to them being sexually predatory, us being sexually predatory. As is, that's the constant thing that happened when I was a gay man, and that's always foisted on. You're rapists, you're all pedophiles or whatever. That's always the fucking what they say about us to keep us down. When I don't know, he's a Catholic, so he's it's I don't think he's got a leg to stand on in terms of let he without sin cast the first stone. But so it's the fucking so that libidinal element, which was always trouble, and I try to talk him out of it. I try and give him examples of feelings of try and relate it to his experience. Specifically, I tried to come at it from every angle. The one that almost worked was appealing to him from the idea that he always wanted to be more masculine than he felt. I feel, he always was he was bullied as a kid, but he always wanted to be a super competent provider type. But unfortunately, all of his talents lied in, faggy abilities like childcare and art. So, he was just not suited for that traditional masculinity. And one time I was talking to him about, just moments in the life where he felt people made him to feel less masculine than he really was. And it seemed like, well, that's sort of how a trans woman would feel. Imagine if instead your compulsion was to feel feminine and people didn't treat you that way throughout your entire life. And that was the one that almost got to him. But of course, no, because because what trans people represent to him is this dissolution of reality and rules and the conservative status quo and the ultimate symbol of the world leaving him behind, because it's something that he truly doesn't understand and doesn't want to understand, and it threatens and isolates him further from what he believes is mainstream society. And so yeah, that whole, there's that whole aspect to it too, what Jordan Peterson talks about with trans people, which is he reduces it to a dissolution of reality. Like literally he always talks about postmodernism, which he thinks in his sort of weird definition of it, it's about there are no narrative structures, and thus there is no structure to the world, and thus the world is like formless ultimate chaos, which fundamentally he doesn't believe, because he's like a Jungian dualist or whatever. He thinks the world is about this yin-yang essential push and pull between light and dark forces, and an essential male and female qualities, which is why trans is metaphysically threatening to Jordan Peterson and someone like my dad. It was funny. My dad is like, he talked about, and he repeats Jordan Peterson lines too, like, of course the world is filled with, how do you get rid of the binary? The world is filled with essential binaries. And it's like, motherfucker, you are Catholic. You believe in the Trinity. Three is your whole thing. There is at least one non-binary entity to God, the nature of God. There's a third thing in Catholicism, and that undergirds your metaphysical reality more than this Jordan Peterson Jungian shit, or it should. But, what do you mean can't be a third thing? What are you talking about? That's your whole thing, is that there's a third thing. The Holy Spirit. Why isn't anyone talking about the Holy Spirit? What's the Holy Spirit doing?
I think she's the femme version of God.
Or as I was even talking about with my dad in our discussions about metaphysics, because he likes talking about that shit. He doesn't read, but he likes making shit up about it. He's thinking about how, of course, if you think about it enough, you realize that since God is infinity, then God must be the devil as well, because there's nothing separate from God, right? Of course, God is also the devil, but the devil is like this weird avatar of God, or that's sort of a conclusion that he had come to, which I thought was sort of interesting and rather sophisticated, because he sort of figured, he didn't read Augustine, but he figured out Augustine, or that's a big part of Catholic dogma, is you need sin or you need bad in this world because you don't understand good without its relative opposite, which is why you need to sin and then confess in order to understand what is good in the path towards your eternal soul or whatever. So I thought that was actually pretty interesting, the fact that he had come to the realization that this carnal or libidinal, this thing that represents these id desires of humankind, is an aspect of God, but for some reason cannot be holy or on the same level of that. There needs to be this separation eternally between the sacred and the profane. The profane cannot enter my sacred. I think they're great together. You put the sacred and profane together, that's like chocolate and peanut butter, baby. That's a good combination. What if they're, Madonna, she's wearing a sexy nun outfit. To me, that's great. Benedetta, they're sexy nuns. To me, that's great. So that's what's funny about Jordan Peterson thing, is like his whole thing is based on the idea that there are two. So I sort of understand where, if like your entire world is undergirded by the fact that there are two things, the idea that they're not solid categories, or one can be the other, or there are third categories of them, is like, this essentially threatening thing. But it's so funny that, and if you read Jordan, he always equates, as a lot of misogynists do. I always thought that was very interesting, because Jordan Peterson also happened upon a brand of misogyny that was familiar to me because I had read a bunch of like Dave Sim. I'd read a bunch of Cerebus, which is a great book. And then Dave Sim goes crazy. he goes nuts. He gets super fucking woman hating with it. And because what he would do is and if you read the woman hating chapters of Cerebus, which you shouldn't, they're like mostly text and they're just awful. Like just really vicious bullshit. But yeah, what was interesting to me is he characterizes men as brights and women as voids because of the obvious. Vagina is cave. They are the dark cave of the vagina. And men are brights because the white pearlescent come, the shining pearlescent come shooting into the void. So the idea that men are this essentially creative force and women are this essentially, absorbing force. Men are the true creators, as in film. Schoonmaker and Scorsese. One shoots this was an old Patton Oswalt bit where like men just jizz all over with their film, and then the editing women, they gotta Thelma Schoonmaker's gotta put it all together. These are the roles, and obviously these are stupid. These roles don't mean anything. These are not fixed roles. There's no woman is not darkness. Woman can be sun. Woman can be light. Men can be darkness. These are stupid. To categorize these things as essential, but I think people like Jordan Peterson and my dad like doing it because there is something deeply threatening about the idea that anything can be anything, that the meaning that we ascribe to words can change over time, and as context changes, so will your perception of reality. Because I think if you are reminded of just how unfixed the world is, you start thinking about the vastness of everything, start thinking about change and progress and how you are not a fixed entity, and you start thinking about how you're going to die, which these people don't want to do. They don't want to, they desperately are afraid of death, yet at the same time they crave heaven because they crave eternal life. So, that's always that tension. They want to be their egos for eternity, which is, just as that's why religion was never a good pitch for me, because I always felt that egolessness seemed much more relaxing than the pitch of you're you for eternity in heaven. Like, man, I'm me for eternity? Like, why wouldn't I want to chill out for a while? Like, that's not even, my metaphysics is I do think you're you for eternity. I'm one of those idiots who thinks that time is a flat circle. I can't prove it. I don't think it's real or whatever. But in terms of what I feel or what I believe, yeah, I'm one of those, like, yeah, you just repeat your life endlessly over and over and over again. Actually, that sort of belief in fate is sort of motivated me to start the trans stuff too, because it's like, if I'm going to have to do this shit again, I gotta make it work. I can't, there's no reward for me in the afterlife. I gotta make this work because I'm gonna have to do it for eternity, so it's, I joke, the tagline for this podcast, I think, is still North America's foremost Calvinist podcast. And that's a gag. The only thing I share with Calvin is a unique fatalism. I am pretty fatalistic. You can hear me talk about on the Jason Novak episode, Hack Cartoonist, we talk about our shared belief in this sort of weird fatalism, which, obviously there's no such thing as fate from our perspective. So fate might as well not even exist. But in terms of what I think the universe, the true nature of the universe is, yeah, it's all on tracks. It's all on it's all just a mathematical equation. So I get off on that tangent there. But, I think that's why I don't want it to be that, though. I would much rather be like you live for a short period and you absorb all this emotion, and then there's this long period when you're unconscious and you're just not there. Maybe there's some presence about you, or there's some idea about you, or some vague form, but you're just sort of chilling out. You're just part of the air. You're part of the atmosphere. To me, that seems much more relaxing as an afterlife than you got to think about stuff more. You have these thoughts in your head, and you have to have social relationships with everyone in heaven, and there's expectations and demands, and you still have a body, and it's like you're not just formless. Or to me, that seems much more stressful. That was always heaven was that classic version of heaven. It was a bad pitch to me. It's no formlessness. That's much more relaxing. I think that's why I could never get into any of those like afterlife-based religions, because it's like, I don't afterlife doesn't sound so good. And also, like, I think the other difference is that I actually am having a pretty decent life, whereas he didn't have a ton of friends, he didn't see a lot of fanfare for his material. I have been lucky enough to get some of that, which is rare to come by. I'm very eternally thankful and grateful that that happened to me. And so, I don't know. I just feel like I fear death less than these people. I mean, actually, that's not even true, because I fear death now much more now that I'm trans, and I really want to start looking way more feminine before the clock ticks down. I really have much more of a reason to live than ever. And I feel that way. I mean, that's why I'm the farthest I've been. It's weird that the trope is, we kill ourselves. We're all suicidal. I mean, I was suicidal before I came out. I had been so far from the fucking thoughts of suicide since I did the whole girl switch turned. It's like astonishing. It has been so fucking great in terms of just how much I want to fucking live, how much I want to be like, how much I'm Nico Robining. I want to live. I think it's an @Weed Catholic on Twitter. She said something, if you're trans, you want to live, it's because you want to live. And that's true. I see that posted around a lot. And yeah, of course, you gotta live, because that's what it's about. Not only that, you have a long-term goal, which is, talk about something that will keep you alive and keep you interested, is a long-term goal. And it's a tough one too, especially if you're doing it at my age. That's a long-term goal, but keeps me invested, keeps me motivated. I've felt a sense of purpose now that I haven't felt in a very long time, maybe if ever. And, I wish I could articulate that to him and he would see that as something that I needed for my health. Because I'll get into like the where it got fucked up. I'll recount the tale. It's not that much of a tale, but I'll tell you why I stopped talking to him. So just for years and years, I'm absorbing all of this terrible stuff that he says about trans women, and he doesn't really know that it's always the thing. He doesn't know that trans men exist. I always bring up trans men to him and it just doesn't register, because his thing is about, as a lot of right-wing people see themselves, they see themselves as the chivalrous protectors of women, which is why I'll have to protect women from trans women using their bathrooms because they're a threat. And so yeah, that odd sense of misogynistic chivalry sort of turns his attention exclusively towards trans women because he believes that they are the predatory ones. Because he always goes into the thing about trans women are just they're just doing it so that they can get into women's bathrooms, so that they can they're using women's bathrooms so that they can assault women. I was like, okay, but if a trans man walked into a male bathroom, would you rape him? Because in my view, that's like you saying that's a woman in my view. And are you saying that a trans man walked into your bathroom, you just can't help myself? It's, what is this logic here? Like, and that didn't even, obviously that doesn't register with him, because he doesn't, the focus of his, except on Elliot Page, I guess he'll talk about trans men only if it's about look at what they're doing to our beautiful girls. That what's it called? What was that horrible book called? Consequences, Permanent Consequences. I don't know. It has it's weird. That Abigail Schreier lady, rapid onset gender dysphoria, whatever. ROGD. Which always reminded me, I always confuse it with the ROTC, the Reserve Officer Training Corps, Rapid Onset Training Corps. I always thought in my head. But yeah, I guess that's the only time he'll pay attention to trans men, if it's like they're killing our beautiful, which is another, misogynistic, we must protect women, we must protect women from the threat of masculinity. Why do I think masculinity is a threat? Because you should see my thoughts. They're terrible and fucked up. So if I'm thinking these things, obviously these trans women who are using these bathrooms who are secretly just men, they're thinking these things as well. I think that's sort of the logic that he's using, which is maybe, I can only speculate. So yeah, he's all the time, just years and years, fuck, I hate trans women, Jordan Peterson, the meaning is dissolving, the world is saying all these, and I'm trying like every angle, I'm gay, he knows I'm gay, he had met my boyfriend, who he liked at the time, and now, whatever, but freaking... he sees even my gay thing as like an example of idolatry. But for him, at least, he was still like a Catholic and relatively conservative, but gay for some reason for a type of person is more easier to tolerate because it's more mainstream. It's been more mainstreamized. Thank you, Glee. Thank you, Ryan Murphy. But also, I think it's easier for straight people to wrap their head around gay than it is for a certain type of cis person to wrap their head around trans, because like the idea of just like, what if I didn't like boobs but I like dick instead? I once had a dumb friend he wasn't dumb, he was just a teenager, but he was being progressive in that way that teenagers in the 2000s were, and we were asking how do you know you're gay or not? Well, I think if you're gay, like in my head, when I'm jerking it, I see like a fresh set of titties. But I think when they're gay, when you're gay, you see dicks in your head. I was like, yeah, you got it. Yeah, you got it, man. You got it, right? Yeah. But he had to clarify first that even though he understands what it would be like to imagine a dick, he himself imagined a fresh set of titties. And I think that's I think he used the phrase fresh set of titties as well. Just burned in my head for eternity. But yeah, so, my dad got, for years, it finally comes to, I'm helping him, my grandma passes away, I'm helping him do this really painful activity of gutting their hoarder house, and like all of these antiques that they had gotten over the years, all of these, wonderful artifacts, just some of them couldn't sell, couldn't give them away. There was a piano. We had to take apart a piano because we couldn't give away this fucking piano. And it was, we had to use an angle grinder to cut this gigantic metal thing. It was one of the last times I had interacted with him, was us dismantling this historic piano, a symbol of his childhood, a symbol of times when he felt more innocent. He was obviously having an emotionally fucked up time with that. I remember we got to and it's all over the place because it's like, I guess there's just no need for pianos anymore and no one wants to take them on because they're gigantic. We get to the dump and it's like, hey, how often do you see a piano getting dumped here? Oh, like all the time. There's just like a big truck with pianos and they're dumping all the pianos. They're just, just imagine the sound. Like 100 pianos getting dumped into a dump and brrr. And I laughed, but talk about a potent symbol for like my dad's fear of like the world passing him by as this old heavy instrument being discarded. And all these like things, there was like a sign from Montreal, the sign for Monkland Grocery that they had kept over the years, my grandmother, and it's this wonderful artifact. It's just gigantic, couldn't give it away, so we had to fucking cut it up and scrap. And so all of this is agitating him too. All of this is just contributing eternally to his constant, the thing that animates, the thing that I believe is at the core of his political belief, which is the world has passed me by. And so he's going harder on ever about trans, and harder than ever about, I hate these fucking people, these fucking blue-haired, assholes. And so, and then he starts the dreaded question, are you that way? Because I had been giving him, answers that were vaguely sympathetic to trans people. At this point, while I was cutting stuff up, I had already knew that, okay, I'm a girl. All these talk about his belief in coincidences. All of these auspicious things had been happening to me. My New Year's dinner, we had at a Chinese buffet, and I got the fortune cookie, and it said a marvelous change will happen to you this year. I was like, sure. Well, I was in Shoppers Drug Mart and I was looking at the makeup aisle and I Want to Break Free by Queen started playing. A little on the nose, universe. A little on the nose, universe. So yeah, if I believed in coincidences, that would be good stuff for me. But yeah, so at this point I had already known, and he asked me, and I say, I don't want to come out to him until I've come out to everybody, or like I don't want him to know, because I know once I come out to him, I'm not going to be able to have a conversation with him again, because all he's going to do is try and dissuade me from doing this, because that's to the core of his belief. And it's, I thought I can't do it. And all he's saying is this stuff that's antagonistic to me, that's existentially antagonistic to me. I mean, having had the experience of being, of saying I'm a gay guy, saying I'm a bi guy, saying I'm and now a trans woman. It's like the treatment of how because they hate you if you're gay, but they believe you're gay. They're like, it's like, even though I think sucking dick is disgusting, I get how someone would want to suck a dick. With trans, there's like this further level of disgust, because there's this thread of that you're only doing this because you want attention, right? You're only doing this because you want some sort of clout or social capital, right? So they believe you don't exist. It's like an existential nihilism. It's this annihilating form of doubt in your essential character, which is, I'm sure gay people experience something like that too, but that's, I think, much more of like the fucked up way that transphobia presents. It's like someone walks up to you and just says, you don't exist. And that's weird. That makes you feel all sorts of ways. As a gay guy, you're like a disgusting freak, but you still get to exist. People still believe that you're not like a weird ghost or something like that. But, that's the line they say to you, is the existentially annihilating. I don't think you exist. This is not real, and that's hard to withstand day after day. You can't withstand somebody telling you you don't exist, you're not real, day after day after day. It's really like, that's, I talked about how like troon is like bad as an insult. Yeah, you don't have to go to troon. If you want to be like devastating, just say what you've always been saying. You're not real. Shouldn't be giving you tips if you've listened to this far. But that's like the eternal things. You're not real. You don't exist. And this isn't, I'm sure, not true of every trans person's experience. But to me, that's like the core devastation with transphobia, especially if it's coming from something you cared about, especially if it's coming from someone who created you, the creator. My creation, you do not exist. You do not actually exist. You are an in-between. You are a dust. You are a feather on the breeze. You are nothing. And so dealing with that sense of annihilation day to day was intolerable. So he starts asking me, are you trans? And I say, I don't want to talk about it, because, and he asks again, are you trans? I don't want to talk about it. So he's piecing it together at this point. I don't want to talk about it, basically. I should have come up with a better, more deflected response, because I don't want to talk about it. Basically code for yes. And while I say he's not a body language master, I think he can obviously pick up on that. And so then he follows up with, because if you do want to talk about it, because if you are, obviously, I don't approve, and I want to talk to you about this, and I don't want you to be in a bubble of everyone telling you this is good, which is an interesting response, because his entire life is, a bubble of affirmation of these weird grifters taking advantage of his loneliness in order to make him, feel good. It's every criticism he has of trans obviously applies to him in this weird projecting sort of way. And at this point, I'm just too like angry to function. Like I've essentially just been forced to show my hand, and it's this great sense of revealing and embarrassment, and also like just like, well, now I know what our relationship's gonna. I see the writing on the wall. It's over now. Like, which brings me great sadness, because I said before, I love my dad. He did so much for me, and I still hold on to those memories. And I desperately want him to come out of this and be a good person, but it's not going to happen. You know, it got too far into him. You know, it's maybe, but probably not. And all it was just that acknowledgement. You know, the message that he left on my machine after it. And he kept calling me. He still wants to contact me. He phones me occasionally, invited me to Easter, but I just can't see him. Not because, you know, I don't want him to... I just can't be around him. That's just, I can't listen to him talk about that stuff. And I know if he's around me, he won't be able to help himself, because the only media he consumes day-to-day basis is anti-trans stuff. And I'm sure now that I'm not talking to him, he has even more of a reason to say that, yeah, I got alienated by the trans menace. And now, you know, I'm sure this has even made him double down even, which I'm sad about, but it's just, yeah, I can't do it. It's very existentially terrifying to be around your dad, with whom many behaviors you share with him, to like a shocking degree, and then have that sort of reflection mirror version of yourself constantly railing at you and telling you don't exist. You know, it's a fucking nightmare. So yeah, I can't talk to, yeah. Maybe I'll come back. Maybe I'll be like, if I'm a few years down the line and I'm on the HRT and it ends up, you know, doing well, and I end up looking good, I end up looking how I want, and I develop that confidence, that greater sense of integrity from it, you know, maybe I will gain the courage to confront him, or maybe not even courage. I think it's just a desire to be like, to still try and deprogram him, to still try and talk him out of his just totally rage-based mentality, his rage and fear-based mentality, this desperate desire to cure him. It's not going to happen. I mean, that's the other problem is, like, yeah, the message he left on my machine sort of made it clear that it's not going to happen. He was sort of rambling. He said a lot of what he said is, what you're doing is very unfair to me, which is interesting. And then he asks twice with this exact phrasing, so are you going to get the surgery? I think I have a right to know. So are you going to get the surgery? I think I have a right to know. This is like a weird fixation. He's like obviously stewing with anger and suppressing it. So he's saying it like almost like Stellan Skarsgård. Are you going to get the surgery? I think I have the right to know. And it's just, you know, once again, I would have preferred anger than what it was, which was that like fucked up like libidinal thing again. That fucked up like, why is there this? Why do you want to know about my goddamn junk? You know, why do you have ownership over it? And I realized that's what it was. You know, I'm your parent. I own your body. I made you. I have the right to know about what you're going to do with it. No, you don't. You made an independent person. And that's when I realized that, oh, you know, that's where the care came from. That's where a lot of the fond memories came from. He wanted me to be a captive audience. Because he created me, he has a right to oversee me. And, you know, that's when I realized it wasn't going to get better. Because I realized how he fundamentally viewed me, which was an extension of himself, which was, you know, not an independent person, but rather something that he wanted some sort of patriarchal dominion over, as a lot of dads do over their daughters. So, welcome to the tribe. You're a girl, you're a woman now. You're a woman now. And so, yeah, I mean, also it prepared me well, because that response, you know, oh, are you getting the surgery? I think I have the right to know. There's nothing any like right-wing person could say to me that's more fucked up than that. There is like, so it was good, like training, absolutely great training for, you know, the onslaught of abuse I'm going to get being a publicly facing trans person. Yeah, and that's what I haven't talked to him since, you know, since I left the house that day, since, you know, I told him, yeah, he asked me through text message, I straight up, I was trans, and I even said, to humor you, no, I'm not getting the surgery. A lot of us don't, okay? And just out of anger, because it's true. I wasn't gonna get the surgery. I'm not getting the fucking. I'm calling it the surgery. I'm not gonna get the orchiectomy or a penectomy or whatever. It's not. It's not my priority. But he has this very singular view of what trans people are, which I think is, another one thing of like, oh, he's always felt diminished as a man. And, now it's this thing of they're turning all of our beautiful men into women. So this is even more. So he fixates on these castration metaphors because it's also this weird libido. It's all wrapped up in there. And, it's weird to experience somebody who's not calm because they sort of lack self-awareness about the sort of weird nature of their psychology. But I guess that's everybody. Hell, that's me too. And so, I have become estranged from my dad. I think a lot of the reason I held off on coming out as trans, too, was because I waited till my grandma passed away because I knew our relationship would end as a result of this announcement, as a result of this revelation. And so I knew he was going through a really traumatic time doing the elder care, so I waited. I did it for him. I waited so long partially because of this guy. Because, I couldn't give him it all at once. Your mother, who you've been doing traumatic elder care for 10 years, Oh, and now your son, who comes out as trans, the thing that you hate most in the world, I couldn't put that amount of pressure on the guy. Which is, feels like, I'm sure they'll have like people, oh, you shouldn't have done it for that asshole. You should have done it. I know. I of course, that's obvious. But, I don't know. I think there was some part of me which felt that if he no longer had to do elder care, maybe he would calm down a little. And then maybe I would be able to, get him with some gentler arguments. But no, it got even worse after. It just always this anger. Always this anger, and I just couldn't have it on me, around me. I couldn't deal with it, because now that anger was specifically directed towards me. And I think that's a good enough reason for estrangement. But maybe I'll contact him in the future. Maybe if he apologized, I would instantly, if he said, I'm sorry, I'm willing to learn, in a second, in a heartbeat, but I don't think that's going to happen. We can hope maybe something will occur one day in his life. And the other thing about it too, which is troubling, is you want to turn them into monsters. You want to dehumanize them and believe they're not capable of that. And some parents very much are. Some people are just like straight up, hellish ghouls, that are only in it for your destruction. But I don't know. The thing that I'm haunted by with my dad, as I'm sure for other people as well, is that he very much does have the capacity to get better. I believe he does, and there's just too many barriers preventing that. Which is why, there's still this desire in me to maybe a few years down the line, more confident, maybe try and talk to him and see, this is permanent. It's not a flash in the pan. I'm not doing it for attention. Look at how much happier I am. Look at how much better I look. Look at how much light is behind my eyes, and the thing about it, you just have to, no, it's not going to be enough. It's not going to, you can be as outwardly, demonstrably happy as possible, and these people will always think you're fucking lying because their worldview depends on it. So, but that's, that's this is a story for many queer people, and not just queer people. There's something, these people who are societally expected to care for you unconditionally and to support you no matter what. What happens if they don't? That's so many people in this world, for one reason or another. And maybe me talking about this, maybe you had a similar experience to this. Maybe you had a parent who you're estranged from, or parents who you're estranged from for reasons other than queerness. But it happens a lot. And the thing that I find why it's relevant, or, relevant to my life, is because sometimes you feel, a great shame for not having a functional, normative family in this way. Or sometimes you feel like you missed out, or like other people got two great parents. Why can't I have one? or why other people got both great parents. Why do I only have one? Feeling whiny about that. And I shouldn't say whiny. Some people had terror. I shouldn't say what. But I think that's because of the societal expectation of how much of yourself you're supposed to get from your parents. I think for a lot of us, there's so many themes of found family and queer in FX pose, found family, and you don't want to be corny about it, but it's really true. You go around through life, and you find these different role models, these positive patriarchal role models. If you go on the Patreon, I did my Toriyama episode, and you can hear me fucking crying during that episode. And I wasn't out as trans yet, and I wasn't, talking about parental estrangement. But that episode, I was getting real fucked with it because, Dragon Ball Z and these characters and Toriyama represented these immensely positive male figures in my life that I wasn't necessarily getting out of, my dad, so. And I think when Toriyama passed, it almost felt like this surrogate father had passed. Someone who presented me with a version of masculinity that was sort of more gentle and caring and strong than the one that I had necessarily received. Which sounds like I'm denigrating my dad a lot, but I think he's still I can't say he's a monster. I think he's a human, and I think he deserves forgiveness, and I think he deserves peace, and I truly wish him that. And I, desperately want to get, reunite, but I don't know if it's going to happen. So, and my story, milder than most. There was no violence, there was no assault, there was no serious, threat of anything other than, not talking to this guy. And he's made attempts, I haven't made attempts to talk to him, but he's phoned me a bunch, and he clearly wants to, but I think it'll just be attempts to deprogram me or dissuade me from transitioning, which I really don't want. I can't have that right now. And, parents, what are you gonna do? House of Decline is brought to you by members of our $10 Patreon tier. These include Big Fan of Noise, Cher, Connor Lane, Constantine Bristow, Daniel Stern, Dr. Spachemin Zero, Fiat Lux, Height Concept, Jody Shen, Jordan Rabe, Keaton Livingston, Kevin Ott, Kimberly Latrun, Liz Heckmayer, Miles Forrester, Piscadoro, Stephen Pikelny, and Tor. Thank you for your contributions. You are making life much easier. Now I can afford electrolysis. Thank you, everybody. You're wonderful folk. Take care.